Two. His music changed the world. The allegations divided it. And now a new documentary is bringing one of entertainment's biggest controversies back into the spotlight. We are talking today about Michael Jackson. This is no contest, the Kolsrud and King Report. I'm Claudia King, and I am here with my lovely Josh Kolsrud. How are you today?
Oh, I'm doing great. What a cool story by Netflix. I mean, their documentaries are just top notch. When
Right?
I watched this, I forgot how fascinating this case is. And, most of us grew up, just knowing or idolizing Michael Jackson. I mean, when I was a kid, my favorite toy was my Michael Jackson doll. I mean, I would just bring it around with me everywhere. Seeing this up front in the media again, I was just really looking forward to seeing what they uncovered
Mm-hmm.
because Netflix oftentimes will find stuff that we just didn't know about or
Right.
discuss theories that nobody thought of at the time. And it really divided the nation. I mean, you had half the nation saying that he did it, the other half saying no way. And, it didn't matter if you were black or white. Like, this
Mm-hmm.
not a race issue. This was, a fan issue. If you were a fan, you were certainly less likely to believe he did it. And those who weren't fans, they're adamant that he did it. So
Who was not a Michael Jackson fan though? How do you not appreciate the the gifts that this man brought to the world as an entertainer?
King of Pop, the
Right.
moonwalk, Thriller, everything. I mean, Thriller, I feel like it's still number one in all the charts. I mean,
It should be.
yeah, fascinating case. And, I hate to say that when the allegations are so serious.
Mhm.
Uh, and, but the documentary, I thought, even though the documentary certainly had its critics, I thought did a decent job of showing both sides.
Mhm.
Although, yeah, I mean, you can't walk away from watching the documentary and not think that he did it. I don't think. I mean,
Agree.
what do you say? Right? I
I
mean,
agree with you on that. It leaves you. It left me feeling like, well, here's the difference. We talked about on a recent episode. Here's the difference between not guilty
and he
and
did it.
innocent.
Oh, true.
So,
Yeah. There's also a difference between doing it and being not guilty.
right,
Like OJ
100%.
Simpson, like we know he did it, but he was clearly not guilty
You know,
because
there are people that think he didn't do it.
I'm
Like
sure there
there
are.
are
Yeah.
legit people running around the world. I'm sure they're going to comment right below and be like, "He didn't do it." That like actually with a straight face are like, "But OJ didn't do it."
Well, everybody is entitled to their opinions,
I
and
guess.
if you believe he didn't do it, as a defense attorney, I want you on my jury. Period.
Right? You're like, "Send me all your info." Like, I'm
Yeah, we're
rounding
gonna
you
get
up
you
and
on.
bringing you
Yep.
to my juries. So, I agree with you though on Michael that it left me feeling like he did it. It left me feeling like what the defense did brilliantly was credibility assassination and character assassination. What do you
And they didn't
think?
do anything wrong. They didn't do anything wrong doing that. So one of the tools that any trial lawyer has in their tool belt is to weaken the credibility of the opposing witness. And prosecutors do it too. So this is just something that defense attorneys do. But you hear about it more about defense attorneys do because we just don't have witnesses that we put on in the numbers that the prosecution has. And that's because they have the burden of proof. They have to prove that this person did this. And with the Michael Jackson documentary, I mean, I had no idea, honestly, that of the some of the credibility issues that these people had.
Hmm.
And there's different ways to judge credibility. So the first way is high impact, low credibility witness. That's one category. So the maid, that they talked about, high impact, low credibility. The pool boy who came in and cleaned the pool, high impact, low credibility. Then you have the other type of category, which is high credibility, low impact. So that's somebody who, we believe, let's just say it's like a rabbi or something. But, they weren't really a witness to anything. So they have a low impact on the case. And that's those two choices. And obviously there's a middle ground too, but that really didn't seem like there was in this case. You were either a high impact, low credibility person or low impact, high credibility. There was nothing in the middle. And all it took, really, it would be one juror to say, no, he didn't do it. But here, you actually had an entire panel. Remember, in order to get a not guilty, as opposed to a hung trial, you need a unanimous not guilty. Not one, not two, not three, 12 jurors must find him not guilty. And they did. So, the defense attorneys did an excellent job destroying the credibility of the witnesses in this case. And I think that's really the reason why they won.
I want to talk to you about that in a second, but first I want to ask you, because of these high impact, low credibility witnesses, did the prosecution make a mistake bringing this case forward to trial?
No, but they made a mistake not preparing the witnesses. To me, it was obvious that the prosecution was not prepared. You should never be surprised by how a witness is going to react or what they say at trial. You don't put a witness on the stand if there are any question marks about anything. The only time that if I was, when I'm going to be teaching the trial advocacy course next week, so I'll tell this to the prosecutors, the only time that you ask a question where you don't know the answer is a time where the answer could never hurt your case. And that just wasn't the case here. The prosecutors were surprised when there was, I forget the lady's name, but she was really cantankerous. She would fight with the defense attorney, and she just wasn't very likable. You should have known that. Like, the fact that she acts like that when she's under pressure is something that you can work with a witness on over time. It can sometimes take months. And trust me, I've worked with difficult witnesses for months before. And by the time they get into the courtroom, like, they're fine. But it takes a lot of man hours, right? And for me, a trial attorney, I just didn't see that the prosecution was prepared to deal with these high impact, low credibility witnesses and the issues that came along with it.
Do you think they were overconfident? Do you think that they went into this and said, well, he already has this out of court settlement that he did for this other thing. And even though, like, the jury isn't really supposed to consider that, they're going to know about it. They'll consider it. And they just thought, we don't have to work real hard. This will be an easy one. We can just sort of check off the list. And so they didn't properly prepare because they were overconfident.
If I was their supervisor and that was their attitude, I would have demoted them. It's just almost malpractice to go into a trial of this magnitude. I mean, you had the entire world watching this case, and you're not prepared. And it's obvious to those who know what they're doing that you weren't prepared. And so whether it was inexperience or hubris, arrogance or ignorance, whatever the combination was a disaster. It was a disaster not just because it was a not guilty, but you put a black eye on the entire office. It's one thing to lose a not guilty. And I've had a couple in my career when I was a prosecutor, actually 3. I still have dreams about them. But I can look in the mirror and tell myself, you know what? I did everything that I could possibly do to win this case. And, it didn't turn out the right way. But I'm so grateful that I don't have to look myself in the mirror and say, I can't believe I wasn't prepared. I got a
Mm-hmm.
not guilty. Uh, that would have stayed with me forever in a way that's not good. Uh, because if you get a not guilty and you do everything right, that's your job. You're the prosecutor. Your job is to present the facts fairly and convincingly to a jury. And if you've done your job, that's justice. Even if someone did it and it's not guilty, it's justice. That's how our system works. But if you get a not guilty, largely because you're not prepared, that's a completely different story. I mean, that imputes the entire that type of black eye goes on the entire office. It's
Mm-hmm.
a stain on the office's credibility. And the amount of alleged victims in that case was significant. The amount of power, if the prosecution was correct, that Michael Jackson had over these kids was
Mm-hmm.
enormous. And he would be a literal monster. And they let him go. I mean, it was a not guilty. They let him loose because they weren't prepared. I mean, I think the documentary should have spent a lot more time on that because it should serve as a lesson for future prosecutors not to go easy on anybody in a case like this or any case.
You know what's interesting? We were just talking about OJ, and you look at those prosecutors and you look
Yeah.
at what happened to their careers
Yeah.
after that.
Oh, yeah.
And and just, and I will say this though, Marcia Clark is a phenomenal fiction writer.
Oh,
Like
she is. Uh,
she she found her better calling
it is a better
because
calling.
she's great.
Horrible, horrible trial attorney, at least at that time. Uh, so in California, they have a rule. So one of the turning points in the OJ trial was when Marcia Clark has OJ demonstrate by attempting to put the black glove on his hand.
Which
If the glove
she blames, not sorry to interrupt you, she blames that on Darden.
okay, well, whoever was responsible, whether it was Darden or Clark, the rule allows a prosecutor to allow and force a defendant to do the demonstration first outside of the presence of the jury. And as a homicide prosecutor on the highest profile case LA County has ever had, you think that you would know that. I mean, there are a lot of things that went wrong in that case, including, the case agent, with the racist stuff.
Harmon.
Marcia
Yep.
Clark, one of the first things I learned when I was taking a trial advocacy course in law school, and we studied this case for things that you should never do. The first thing that you should never do is what they did during their opening statements, the prosecutors, which was spend the first 5 minutes thanking the jury for being there. I mean, like the best time to capture a jury's attention is in opening statements and
Mm-hmm.
with the first part of it. 80% of jurors have made up their minds after opening statements, and they lost the jury in their opening. I mean, it was completely horrible. They shouldn't have lost that case. Period. Like it's
Right.
still, as a former prosecutor, it's annoying to me even to think about all of the mistakes that they made. Now, it's easy playing Monday morning quarterback, and I have studied this case, but I'll tell you, I've never done what they've done, and I can't imagine any decent attorney would.
I agree with you. And I apologize for taking us on that tangent, but it just made me think about it because like we really saw the downfall of the professional careers of those attorneys. And then you
Yeah.
have these attorneys in the MJ case that we really didn't like it wasn't as public, as downfallish, I guess. It just the contrast was very stark to me. But what I want to talk about is destroying the credibility of the witnesses or
Sure.
attacking the witnesses. And I want to talk to you about that from an ethical perspective in dealing with assault victims, sex assault victims, child sex assault victims. You
Yeah.
know, our system does try to protect those people and tries to respect the situation that they allegedly have gone through. But at the same time, it is the defense's job to attack. So, where
Yeah.
do you
Yeah.
think the line is as a defense attorney? What's okay and what's not okay in your mind?
As usual, excellent question. I'll tell you why. Because the in child molest cases, when you have a child witness, the rules change. Not literally they change, but figuratively, where if you're a defense attorney and you're trying to hurt the credibility of a witness, you can't treat a child witness the same as you would treat an adult witness, period. Juries are unforgiving to defense attorneys who make child molestation victims cry or treat them in any way badly. I remember, I was in the sex crimes unit for quite some time, and I have had so many child molest trials when I was a prosecutor where defense attorneys wouldn't even ask a single question to a child victim. Now, turn that on its head. The attorneys in Michael Jackson's case, they did something that was revolutionary at the time. And that was that they did treat the child victims like they would with adults. And it was a brilliant strategy uh, because when you think about it, if you're accused of child molestation unjustly, let's say you didn't do it, it's one of the most heinous things that you could ever be accused of and have to go through, if especially if you didn't do it. So, put yourself in a defendant's position where he's unjustly accused of child molestation. You have this kid over here who's being coached by mommy because she wants millions of dollars. You know, you may want to have some anger in your voice. This kid is trying to ruin your life, put you away for the rest of your life. There is, I think, room for righteous indignation. And the Michael Jackson attorneys did a great job of showing that. And they did it in a way where it seemed appropriate under the circumstances. And ultimately, they were correct that the witnesses, the child witnesses that testified, were not credible because of a variety of reasons, and they were able to point that out. Now, your question had to do with ethics. What can you ethically do? So, when I think of ethics, I think of the lawyer's rules for professional conduct and responsibility. And under the rules, they're pretty liberal on cross-examination. In most jurisdictions, you as an attorney can ask any question where you have a good faith basis to believe it's relevant. That's pretty wide open. Uh, Now, you can't go beyond that, and there's no accusation that the Michael Jackson's attorneys did. Uh, so the ethics certainly allow a lot of leeway, especially to defendants who are accused of a horrible crime. And one other thing too, you did mention, the contrast of careers between the OJ attorneys and the Michael Jackson attorneys. One of the reasons for that, and we talked about this before the show, was that courtroom cameras had the OJ Simpson trial on live TV for like
Mm-hmm.
months, and that was not allowed in the Michael Jackson case, and that's significant. Uh, I mean, what are your thoughts about courtrooms, or sorry, cameras in the courtroom?
I feel like it's a great thing because what we see and what we just recently saw with Carmelo Anthony where cameras were not allowed in the courtroom,
Yeah,
is
good
there
point.
becomes the telephone game of the very few people who are in the courtroom telling the story of what they witnessed, but then people run with different versions of that based on how they feel, who they support, what they think should have happened. And had there been cameras in that particular trial, I think hopefully more people would understand the evidence, the law, and why Carmelo Anthony was found guilty. So I understand the difficulty when there's kids involved, and you don't want to show kids, and you want to protect their identities and what they went through. But our justice system is public, right? We're supposed to be like, we're all part of this. And when you close it off, it sometimes feels like there's something to be hidden, and it shouldn't feel that way. Delphi was the same way.
Great points. And I can't wait for our episode of Carmelo Anthony to come out because I really look forward to discussing what you just said. I want to bring it into this one, but we're going to save it. Uh, you're right. Our system of justice is unique. It's the most open in the world. It's also the most collaborative with our juries. The vast majority of countries do not have a jury system, and if they do, it's not as vast as the one that we have. It's still and remains the one area where the public has a lot of power, not politicians, not governors, presidents, the legislature, Congress, courts, the people. And, that's tremendous. It's checks and balances. And I agree with you that it does lend credence to the credibility of what's going on. Now, there are certainly counter arguments where having something televised can influence a jury or the
Sure.
courtroom lawyers or a
Mm-hmm.
judge. For example, the argument is that the judge or the lawyers, the prosecutor, they wouldn't make certain arguments and do certain things if they weren't on TV. They want to make a show because it's their ego or whatever, and that's a legitimate point. But does it outweigh the effect of having live coverage? I don't know about that. They do not allow ever cameras in federal courts.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why, with the P. Diddy case, for example, we only saw drawings of people in the courtroom. So, state courtrooms, it is allowed unless if a judge permits it, but federal courtrooms, never allowed. So it's very nuanced, but yeah.
It's interesting. And I do also want to say, in addition to what you said about our justice system, as flawed as it may be, it's still the best in the world.
It is, and it's not even close. And it's because of, in large part, the appellate process as well. When you're found guilty at trial, you still have the opportunity to appeal it if there are issues that happen during trial or even before trial. And, you know, doing that, it helps hone in the fairness of the law. And you really see the law exposed in a way that you never would if you didn't have the appellate process. Uh, so if there's a bad law, for example, it'll be exposed
Mm-hmm.
relatively quickly on appeal, or if it goes to the Supreme Court. So, it's genius, really, how this system, allows, as close to justice as I think society can allow.
I agree. I agree with you. I want to ask you one more MJ question. So, a lot of the documentaries that Netflix produces are current or very recent cases. We covered Mackenzie Sharilla recently, and sadly, we see Mackenzie phone calls and all this stuff because she's here. She's defending herself against all this stuff. Michael isn't here to defend himself. Do you think it's fair to release something like this now when he doesn't have that opportunity?
Well, I think that it is because number one, he's a public figure. And, you know, with that, he still has his attorneys. He still has a lot of people who are there to argue on his behalf. Also, the trial, even though it was not live on TV, we're still all aware of what the evidence was. And when you're Netflix or any person doing a documentary, the really compelling ones are the ones where at the end of it, you don't know what the right answer is because they fairly present the facts of both sides. And you don't necessarily need a defendant still alive to do that. And, if I was Michael Jackson's attorney, I would probably advise him not to do the documentary because the last time he did one, he ended up being prosecuted.
That's
I
what
mean,
started everything.
the fact that, tell me exactly, let's tell our audience exactly what happened with that. Do you recall like how he was called? And didn't this person who did the documentary, wasn't he involved in like the Princess
Princess
Diana?
Diana. So he
Yeah.
had done a documentary with Princess Diana, and Michael had seen that, and he felt like, hey, this guy will give me like a great look. He will make me look amazing in the public eye. This will like clear off any allegations of anything, throw the clouds away from above me. So he
Yeah.
works it out, or his people, work it out to get this person to do this documentary with him. And what Michael didn't know was, the Princess Diana documentary, it wasn't all it seemed to be. And when this guy came in with Michael, I don't want to say he had an ulterior motive, but he didn't give all the warm and fuzzies that Michael thought he was going to give. And that was the beginning of this whole thing, because you have Michael being interviewed with this one young boy, and they show them holding hands and then start talking about the whole sleeping in the bed together. And then
Yeah,
it
so
was
yeah,
a
what did he say?
circus.
What was the question and what did Michael say? Do you remember?
Uh,
It was like, so you sleep together or something, and he's like,
it's,
well, and his
it's not,
friends.
it's not, it's not sexual. It's
But then
just,
didn't the boys say like, Michael said, if you don't do it, you don't love me?
yeah. And there were notes. There were
Yeah.
notes as
And
well.
there was the keypad too, where like even his wife didn't have access, only the boys did. Right?
Yeah. It wasn't good. It
No,
wasn't
it was not
good.
a good look. Uh, from a PR standpoint, I mean, like there isn't a reasonable explanation for this other than the guy's crazy, because nobody does what he did uh,
Mm-mm.
isn't a sex offender. And so it was almost like, all right, well, explain to us how this isn't sexual. Or, you're swimming nude with these boys in the swimming pool. I mean, the maid said that, or it was the pool boy said that, he saw him, giving a boy fellatio. I mean, just horrible
I
stuff.
appreciate your scientific use of proper verbiage. We're professionals around here,
That's
everybody.
right.
We do this right. And when you see those things, then it is amazing to know that he was found not guilty. And it just kind of makes me angrier at the prosecution for flubbing it.
Yeah, they had this one in the bank. I mean, great facts for a conviction.
Mm-hmm.
Great facts. I mean, on paper, if I'm looking at this case as a charging attorney or as a bureau chief, and I'm reading the reports, I am saying, wow, you guys nailed them.
Slam
Great job.
dunk.
Yeah, great job on your investigation. I mean, there wasn't any really accusation that law enforcement was to blame or that law enforcement didn't do this, they didn't
We
do
were
that.
clear on this one.
Yeah,
This was on you guys.
yeah, exactly,
For
exactly.
once. For once.
Right. Yep. This one was on the prosecution. It was theirs to lose, and they did.
They did it bigly. They did it bigly.
Mhm.
What is the next documentary that you want to see out of Netflix? Like, what
Great question.
case do you hope they cover?
Wow. Well, which ones haven't they done yet?
Hmm.
I'm trying to think right now, and I'm drawing a blank.
Can I answer while you're thinking?
Yeah,
Because I have one. So
sure.
I was actually talking about this case today. It's a very old case. It's before either of us were even on this earth. The Jeffrey McDonald case in
Okay.
Fort Bragg, North Carolina.
Uh huh.
He is in prison now. He's now like 80 something years old. He was convicted of murdering his pregnant wife and two children. This case has problems. It has always struck me as one just with a lot of issues. If you're not familiar with it, go look it up. Don't read Fatal Vision. That book is not the one to read. There's a lot of other ones that have actual facts in them. I would love to see Netflix pick that case up and run with it and show us what they got.
Let's do an episode on it, and it'll be
Yes.
so awesome that Netflix
Yes.
will watch us and be like, "We've got to do this. We've got to do this."
Josh,
Yep, we got
when
the
you
best
get
man.
back in
Yeah,
town, Jeff
okay.
McDonald,
Let's do
we're
it.
doing it.
I love it. Yeah.
I love it. Anything else you want to say on MJ before we close out another round of no contest?
I hope that the victims in the case have some semblance of closure. Having been a sex crimes prosecutor for a long time, I know the effect that that type of crime has on kids, and it's something they're going to have to deal with for the rest of their lives, and
Mm-hmm.
not just them. It's generational.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mean that they'll necessarily molest their kids, but there is a tone, there is a feeling that is passed on down of shame and anger that is hard to shake. And I really hope that these kids, get through this and got through this. It's been a few years, but whenever I hear about sex crimes or anything involving children, I really hope they're okay. And I would have hoped that the documentary would have answered that question, because I think that's the most important question. Like, how are
Mm-hmm.
they doing today? And unfortunately, they didn't address it. So Netflix, if you're listening, next time, make sure you talk to the victims, because we want to hear from them.
Yes, I agree. And I just want to say, and we have talked about this before, as a victim whose perpetrator for political and other reasons was not prosecuted, I believe that you have to look at justice as doing everything that you can do to further the case. And those victims did that. They did their part. And it's unfortunate that the prosecution didn't do their part as well, but the victims did their part, and hopefully they can take heart in that and know that you did what you could, and that's all you can rely on yourself to do.
Exactly. Exactly. I love it.
Awesome. Well, Josh, it has been another amazing episode of No Contest. So until next time, when apparently we're going to cover the Jeff McDonald case, you guys, this is an oldie but a goodie. Josh, until next time, I'm Claudia King for Josh Kolsrud. This is No Contest. We'll see you next week.